One of my favorite times of year is the fall when we start to pick out Dutch bulbs for spring flower gardens. And right now I want to give you a few tips on picking out the very best ones to make your garden a success. Whether you're ordering them by mail or going through the bins at the local hardware stores and garden centers, the first thing you want to remember is to buy quality. Buy the best quality that you can afford for good success. Now with tulips, for instance, you want to make sure that the tunic or the skin, papery skin that overlays it, is intact and in good shape. That's a sign of a good quality bulb, versus one right here that's had all of it knocked off and is starting to get a little bit of disease started on it. You also want to feel them. Just like picking out onions at a grocery store, you want to make sure that they're good and firm and have not become spongy. If you're looking for daffodils, you want to buy the jumbo size if possible, and if you want them to be dividing up and making a nice clump, you can get ones like this that are starting to have offshoot bulbs and will make a good clump in the garden. Now there are some things that are already putting off little bulbils, or bulblets rather, and this is some oxalis. If you've ever seen the giant shamrock looking plant in the garden, this is what the bulb looks like. It's very unusual, and down underneath it has some little bulblets just coming off, and so that's actually two plants in one, and you're getting a bit of a bonus. Now, how do they propagate things like hyacinth that tend to not really divide up? Well, this is something you might want to try as a project at home this fall. It's an unusual project for Dutch bulbs, and that is scooping out hyacinth bulbs. This is kind of a fun project. Just take a vegetable peeler and pick out some healthy hyacinth bulbs, and keep in mind these aren't going to flower for you this year, but this is a fun way to propagate them. And what you do is you look at the basal plate, and keep in mind that that's the bottom part that you normally plant. And on the inside of it are strands of old dried roots. When you start scooping that out with a vegetable peeler, being careful to leave this ring of rootlets that are just forming, leave that intact, and just scoop out the center of it. And we've tried different things like a melon scooper. I've tried it with a pocket knife at home, and it turns out that this part that you use for scooping out eyes on potatoes seems to work out really well. What you're doing is you're damaging the tissue, and in response to that it stresses the bulb a little bit, and it will form little wart-like bulblets within a few weeks. And the next step you do after you scoop that out, and again leaving that outer rim intact, is put that down in a little bit of fungicide. You could use dusting sulfur or some kind of all-purpose fungicide, and that will coat that surface and keep it from rotting. Then the next thing you do is put it in a pot of sand. We have one already done here. Just wedge that down in. You want to moisten that and keep that in a warm, dark place for a few weeks. And what will happen is after a while, down in this scooped out area, you're going to have several little bulblets beginning to form. You'll be able to break those off, and we're going to see if this works this fall, and we will follow up on it. You can break those off, pot them up right side up, and then go ahead and grow some new hyacinths, and we'll see if it works out for us. Well, over here, let's get some bulbs planted. Now, the way that we like to plant bulbs in the Oklahoma Gardening Studio is not lining along sidewalk like a bunch of soldiers, and also not going around with a bulb planter and doing one hole after another. We like to scoop out an entire hole, excavate it, and then plant the bulbs as a bouquet. Now, right here I have a two-tiered hole that we've prepared, and down in here I'm going to plant some daffodils, but first I want to work in a mixture of bone meal and blood meal. Now keep in mind that the roots are on the bottom and they grow down and out. They're not going to grow up into fertilizer. So you want to make sure that you dust that in and work it in fairly well into the soil before planting. We have a fairly wet site because of all that rain, and that's one tip I want to give you, is make sure that you plant these into a well-drained site, work in plenty of organic matter ahead of time, because bulbs will rot. And that's part of the problem with getting tulips, for instance, to come back year after year in the southern states, is the fact that they tend to rot in soils from warm, moist soils more than anything else. Okay, up on this shelf we have some muscari or grape hyacinth, and we'll get those planted out. And then I want to give you some neat tips on planting crocus. In fact, for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and move on over there. But keep in mind you want to mix your bone and blood meal up and then get the grape hyacinth in. Now, if you're going to put crocus out in a lawn area or in a garden and you're not sure how many you want to put out or where to put the holes, think about using a spading fork like this and just make your holes. I've already done one right there. You can do them in a cross shape or in a bouquet pattern, and you can fill the bottom of the hole with a little bit of bone meal and blood meal, and then go ahead and poke your crocus down in there and then cover it over with a little bit of potting soil. That plants them in a neat pattern. They're already clumped together, and it's an easy way to space them apart. So you might try that as well. Well, now we want to show you a new theme garden where some more bulbs will be going in.